The mockery, the grand hall of the Galactic Assembly, stretched before Commander Sarah Vale like a cathedral of alien achievement. Crystalline walls rose hundreds of meters overhead, refracting light from 3 distant suns into cascading rainbows. The floor beneath her boots was smooth as glass, etched with symbols from 1,000 worlds. She stood alone on the presentation platform, surrounded by holographic displays showing Earth's military capabilities, while above her, representatives from 43 species watched from their observation galleries. Sarah had rehearsed this moment for 6 months. Every word, every gesture, every technical specification had been memorized and perfected. Earth's future among the stars depended on this presentation. If humanity could prove its military worth, they would gain full partnership status in the Assembly. Resources, technology, protection, all of it hinged on the next hour. She activated the first display with a gesture. A 3-dimensional image materialized above her head, rotating slowly. The M90 Warhorse, Earth's primary main battle tank. 60 tons of composite armor, a 140mm railgun, and treads designed to conquer any terrain from Arctic tundra to volcanic ash. Distinguished representatives, Sarah began, her voice amplified throughout the chamber. I present humanity's ground warfare capabilities. This vehicle represents our most advanced armored platform, capable of sustained operations in any environment. A sound interrupted her. It took a moment to recognize it as laughter. The Draxians were chittering among themselves, their insectoid bodies vibrating with amusement. Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks, but continued. The M90 features adaptive armor plating, integrated AI targeting systems, and, forgive the interruption, Commander. The voice belonged to High Strategist Zethker of the Draxian Collective. His translator rendered his clicking mandibles into smooth, condescending tones. Did you say this machine moves on? Treads? Like ancient mining equipment? Sarah's jaw tightened. Treads provide superior traction and weight distribution across varied terrain. They're proven technology. That proven? Another voice, this time from the Velorum section. Captain Arenas, a being of flowing light contained within a crystalline shell, pulsed with colors that Sarah's briefing materials had described as indicating amusement. Commander, our hover armor phases through solid matter. It manipulates gravitational fields to achieve speeds exceeding 600 kilometers per hour. And you present us with tracks on dirt? More laughter rippled through the chamber. Sarah glanced at the human delegation seated in the observer section. Ambassador Chun gave her an encouraging nod, but Sarah could see the concern in his eyes. She pressed forward, showing humanity's fighter craft, artillery systems, naval vessels. Each revelation brought more barely concealed mockery. The Draxians had plasma-shielded fighters that could survive stellar atmospheres. The Aquari grew their warships from living coral that healed battle damage within hours. The Velorum could create weapons from pure thought, shaping energy with their collective consciousness. Earth's chemical rockets, ballistic missiles, and projectile weapons seemed like stone tools compared to galactic standards. When Sarah finished her presentation, the Assembly's Military Council deliberated for exactly 7 minutes. High Strategist Zethker delivered their verdict with what Sarah now recognized as barely disguised contempt. The Galactic Assembly appreciates Earth's enthusiasm. However, your military capabilities do not meet the standards required for full partnership. We offer observer status. You may contribute to our economy and culture, but in matters of defense, more capable species will provide protection. Protection. The word felt like a slap. Sarah had commanded carrier groups, led peacekeeping missions on 3 continents, and earned decorations from a dozen nations. Now she was being patted on the head and told to let the adults handle the dangerous work. The return journey to Earth took 18 days aboard a Velorum transport. Sarah spent most of it in her quarters, reviewing the presentation, searching for what she could have done differently. But deep down, she knew the truth. It wasn't about her presentation. The aliens simply couldn't see past their technological superiority. Back on Earth, Sarah found herself at the Patton Museum of Cavalry and Armor in Kentucky. She'd visited it as a cadet decades ago. Now, walking among the preserved vehicles of human warfare, she felt drawn to a particular exhibit. The M4 Sherman tank sat on its pedestal, lovingly restored. Commissioned in 1942, it had rolled across Europe and the Pacific, defeating an empire that had seemed invincible. Its armor was thin by later standards. Its gun was adequate at best. Yet it had won a world war through sheer numbers, reliability, and the determination of its crews. "They laughed at us," Sarah said quietly to the silent machine. "History suggests that's unwise," replied a voice behind her. She turned to find Dr. Marcus Webb, the museum's director. He was elderly, with kind eyes that had seen their share of service. Every empire that underestimated human stubbornness learned the same lesson eventually. Sarah managed a weak smile. The galaxy has hover tanks that phase through walls and living ships that heal themselves. What do we have? Metal boxes on treads. Exactly, Webb said, running his hand along the Sherman's hull. Metal boxes that work. That can be fixed with a welding torch and spare parts. That don't need exotic materials or advanced manufacturing. Simple, reliable, effective. He paused. "Commander, do you know how many Sherman tanks were produced during World War II? Around 50,000, wasn't it? 49,234, to be exact. While the enemy built technically superior tanks in small numbers, we built good enough tanks in overwhelming quantities. Quality has its place, but quantity has a quality all its own." Sarah looked at the old tank with new appreciation. "You think we should be proud of being primitive?" "I think we should be proud of being practical," Webb corrected. "Sophistication is brittle. Simplicity endures." Their conversation was interrupted by Sarah's unit. "Emergency priority." Her face went pale as she read the message. "What is it?" Webb asked. "Asterisk. The Void Scourge," Sarah said, her voice distant. "First contact happened 3 hours ago in the Kelthera system. The Assembly's response fleets are? They're being destroyed. The next 72 hours brought nothing but bad news. The Void Scourge was unlike anything the galaxy had encountered. They weren't invaders in any traditional sense. They were parasites, vast and ancient, drifting through space in colossal bioships that consume everything organic. Worlds, fleets, entire species all became fuel for their endless hunger. The Assembly threw everything at them. Draxian plasma lances that could cut through asteroids, Velorum thought weapons that could shatter mines, Aquari living torpedoes that adapted to any defense. For 48 hours, it seemed to work. Then the Scourge began to adapt. The plasma lances were absorbed and redirected. The thought weapons were deflected by the Scourge's collective hive consciousness. The living torpedoes were infected and turned against their creators. Every advanced system, every technological marvel, became useless within hours of deployment. Sarah watched the reports from Earth's Defense Command Center, her strategic mind cataloging the disaster unfolding light years away. The Assembly was losing badly. They'd relied so heavily on their advanced technology that they'd forgotten how to fight. Without it, on the 5th day of the crisis, Sarah's unit buzzed with an incoming transmission. She almost didn't recognize High Strategist Zethker. The confident condescension was gone, replaced by something that looked disturbingly like fear. "Commander Vale," he said, his translator stripping away the normal linguistic flourishes to deliver raw urgency. The assembly requests Earth's immediate military assistance. Sarah felt a dozen emotions war inside her. Anger at their previous dismissal. Vindication at being proven right. Fear of what this crisis meant. And beneath it all, a grim satisfaction. What changed your mind, High Strategist? The Scourge adapts to everything we use against them. Our most advanced weapons become useless within hours. We need. He paused, mandibles clicking in what might have been embarrassment. We need primitive weapons. Simple ones. Things the Scourge cannot predict or adapt to. Things like treads and ballistic weapons? Yes. Sarah let the silence stretch for a long minute. Not out of cruelty, but because she needed to think. Earth had every reason to refuse, to let the assembly reap what they'd sown. But that wasn't humanity's way. It had never been humanity's way. We'll need full tactical command of combined operations, she said finally. Granted. And when this is over, we renegotiate Earth's status. Agreed. How soon can you deploy? Sarah thought of the warehouses full of equipment the assembly had mocked. The tanks with treads, the missiles with chemical propellant, the rifles that fired simple metal projectiles. All the obsolete technology Earth had maintained because humanity understood a truth the galaxy had forgotten. The oldest weapons were old because they worked. 72 hours, she said. We'll meet you at Kelthera 9. Asterisk. The fleet that departed from Earth orbit 3 days later was unlike anything the assembly had seen humanity field before. Not because it was advanced, but because it was deliberately archaic. Transport ships carried thousands of vehicles pulled from reserve depots and military museums. Tanks from the late 21st century, artillery pieces using chemical propellant, even infantry with projectile rifles that would have been familiar to soldiers from 200 years earlier. The assembly liaison, a Velorum named Crystallis, met Sarah aboard the flagship Indomitable as they approached. Kelthera 9, the being's crystalline form pulsed with confused colors. Commander Vale, I must confess confusion. Our scans show your vehicles use combustion engines? Mechanical transmissions? Surely you have more advanced systems available? Sarah smiled grimly. We do. But advanced isn't what you need right now. You need reliable. You need simple. You need weapons the Scourge can't adapt to, because there's nothing to adapt to. A bullet is a bullet. Momentum and mass. You can't evolve past physics. I hope you're correct, Crystallis said. Because if you're wrong, Kelthera 9 falls within 36 hours. And after that, the Scourge reaches the inner systems. Then let's make sure we're right. As the human fleet dropped into orbit around Kelthera 9, Sarah stood on the bridge, looking down at the scarred world below. Scourge bioships clustered around it like tumors, their organic hulls pulsing with stolen energy. Assembly forces held a desperate perimeter, but it was collapsing. All units, Sarah broadcast on the General Command Channel. This is Vale. We're going in heavy, and we're going in old school. Show them what humanity does best. Show them why simple works. The transport ships began their descent, and as they dropped through the atmosphere toward the besieged planet below, Sarah felt a cold certainty settle over her. The galaxy was about to learn why humans never threw anything away. Asterisk. The reckoning the dropships screamed through Kelthera 9's atmosphere like meteors, their heat shields glowing orange against the planet's perpetual twilight. Inside the lead transport, Commander Sarah Vale gripped the overhead rail as the vessel shuddered and bucked. Around her, 300 soldiers in powered armor checked their weapons, not energy rifles or plasma carbines, but reliable projectile weapons that humanity had perfected over centuries. 30 seconds to dirt, the pilot announced. Sarah switched to the command channel. All units, remember your training. The Scourge adapts to energy signatures and complex systems. We're going loud, kinetic, and aggressive. No fancy tech, just good old-fashioned firepower. The transport slammed into the ground with tooth-rattling force. Ramps dropped, and the first human-armored vehicles rolled onto Keltheron soil. The M-90 Warhorse tanks, their treads churning through the purple-gray dirt, followed by mobile artillery, mechanized infantry carriers, and support vehicles that would have looked at home on a 20th century. Battlefield, the Scourge was waiting. Bioships had seeded. The landing zone with warrior forms massive. Creatures that were part crustacean, part insect, part nightmare. They'd been adapted from a dozen consumed species. Their exoskeletons reinforced with organic armor that could withstand plasma fire. Assembly forces had thrown everything at these horrors for days with minimal effect. Sarah watched through her command display as the first wave of Scourge warriors charged the human lines. All armor, weapons free. Fire at will. The M90s opened up with their railguns. The thunderous booms echoed across the battlefield as 140-millimeter depleted uranium rounds punched through organic armor like tissue paper. Scourge warriors exploded in sprays of ichor, their adaptive armor useless against simple kinetic energy delivered at hypersonic velocities. The creatures tried to adapt. Their exoskeletons thickened, growing denser. The humans switched to high explosive rounds. The creatures developed energy-absorbing layers. The humans fired white phosphorus shells that burned with chemical fury, impossible to adapt to, because chemistry didn't care about evolution. Colonel Martinez, Sarah called to her ground commander. Push forward to grid Echo 7. Artillery, prepare fire mission on coordinates. I'm uploading now. Commander. Crystalis appeared beside her, the Velarum's form pulsing with shocked violet. Your tactics are so direct. There's no subtlety, no adaptation to the enemy's responses. That's the point, Sarah replied. We don't adapt to them. We make them adapt to us. And you can't adapt fast enough to a 155-millimeter artillery shell landing on your head. As if to punctuate her words, the human artillery batteries opened fire. Dozens of guns roared in sequence, hurling tons of high-explosive ordnance across kilometers of terrain. The shells arced through the sky in ballistic trajectories, guided by nothing more sophisticated than mathematics and physics. They crashed into Scourge concentrations with devastating effect, turning entire grid squares into cratered WA-STELA-ND-S. The Scourge tried to respond with their bio-artillery, creatures that launched acid projectiles and toxic spores. Human infantry met them with flamethrowers weapons, so ancient they predated spaceflight, yet devastatingly effective against organic targets. The biology burned just as well as it had throughout human history. All units advance, Sarah ordered. Maintain formation. Infantry, clear those structures. Armor, provide support. The human forces moved with practiced coordination. It wasn't the fluid, technological integration the assembly used, where AI systems linked every soldier and vehicle into a seamless network. It was old-fashioned combined arms warfare, infantry and armor supporting each other, artillery providing fire support, officers making decisions based on experience rather than computer recommendations. High strategist Zefker watched from his command ship in orbit, his mandibles clicking in confused amazement. Captain Arenas, are you observing this? The Velarum's response carried tones of disbelief. I am. They're using tactics from their planetary warfare era. No advanced systems, no technological integration. It's like watching history repeat itself. And yet, Zefker said slowly, they're winning. It was true. In 6 hours, human forces had accomplished what assembly armies couldn't do in 6 days. They'd broken through the Scourge perimeter, established a secure beachhead, and were pushing toward the primary hive clusters. The Scourge kept trying to adapt, kept evolving defenses against what they'd already encountered, but couldn't keep pace with the sheer variety of simple, brutal human weapons. On the ground, Lieutenant Colonel James Reeves commanded the 2nd Armored Division from his tank Sledgehammer. He'd been a military historian before the Scourge crisis, teaching courses on the evolution of ground warfare. Now he was living that history. Driver, forward 50 meters. Gunner, target that cluster of biophones at 2 o'clock. The railgun fired, and another group of Scourge warriors ceased to exist. Through his periscope, Reeves watched as human infantry moved through the ruins of a Keltheron city, using cover and movement techniques that hadn't changed fundamentally in 300 years. The Scourge was utterly unprepared for it. A Draxian liaison officer had attached himself to Reeves's tank. Sub-Commander Thrace had spent days studying human tactics with undisguised confusion. Now, as he clung to Sledgehammer's exterior, his translator rendered his thoughts into words. "Colonel Reeves, I must understand something. Your weapons are less powerful than ours. Your vehicles are slower. Your soldiers lack the enhancement we provide our warriors. Yet you're more effective. How?" Reeves smiled. "Because war isn't about having the best equipment, Sub-Commander. It's about having equipment that works when everything goes wrong. Our tanks don't need exotic fuel or complex maintenance. Our rifles fire even when covered in mud. Our artillery doesn't require eye targeting to put rounds on target. Everything we have is designed to be simple, reliable, and fixable with basic tools. But the Scourge adapts to everything. They adapt to complexity," Reeves corrected. "You can't adapt to a lump of metal traveling at 3,000 meters per second. Physics is physics. Evolution can't change the laws of the universe." The advance continued. By nightfall, Kelthera 9's 40-hour night cycle human forces had pushed the Scourge back 15 kilometers and destroyed 3 major hive clusters. Assembly observers couldn't believe what they were seeing. Sarah stood in the command tent, studying holographic displays that showed the battlefield in real time. Crystallis materialized beside her, the Velarome's colors shifting to indicate deep thought. "Commander Vale, I owe you an apology. We dismissed your capabilities because we couldn't see past our own technological prejudice. You've accomplished in hours what we couldn't in weeks." Sarah didn't look up from the displays. "The apology I want isn't from you, Crystallis. It's from the Assembly. Recognition that different doesn't mean inferior. That old doesn't mean obsolete. You'll have it. High Strategist Zethgar has already begun drafting new partnership protocols. Earth will have full military status with command authority over combined operations. That's a start. But this isn't over yet. The Scourge is going to adapt eventually. They always do. What will you do when they adapt to kinetic weapons?" Sarah finally looked at the Velorum, a grim smile on her face. "We'll use bigger kinetic weapons. And if they adapt to those, we'll use different kinetic weapons. Humanity has been killing things for 10,000 years, Crystallis. We've gotten very good at it. The assault on the primary Scourge hive began at dawn. It was a massive structure, a bioorganic fortress that pulsed with stolen life energy. Assembly forces had tried to take it twice and been repelled both times. Now human forces prepared for their attempt. "This is going to be tough," Colonel Martinez said, studying the target. "That thing is massive. Heavy defenses, thick walls, and probably full of every kind of warrior form they can throw at us." "Then we do what we've always done," Sarah replied. "We knock on the door very loudly." The artillery barrage began with a sound like thunder that wouldn't stop. Every gun the humans had brought focused on the hive, pouring high explosive shells into its structure. The organic walls tried to absorb the impacts, tried to adapt, but there was too much too fast. Armor cracked. Walls crumbled. Internal structures collapsed. Armor advance, Sarah ordered. Infantry follows. Clear every chamber, every tunnel. No survivors. The M90 is rolled forward, their railguns firing continuously. Engineers followed with explosives, demolishing load-bearing structures. Infantry cleared the organic passages with flamethrowers and grenades. It was brutal, direct, and effective. The Scourge threw everything they had at the assault. Acid spitters, blade warriors, even suicide forms that tried to overwhelm human positions through sheer numbers. But human doctrine had answers for all of it. Concentrated fire, defensive positions, coordinated maneuvers. By midday, the hive was burning. By evening, it was silent. Sarah stood in what had been the hive's central chamber, now a cratered ruin. Around her, human soldiers established a command post among the wreckage. Assembly observers arrived via shuttle, their various forms expressing shock in species-specific ways. High Strategist Zethker approached her, his usual confidence replaced with something like humility. Commander Vale, on behalf of the Galactic Assembly, I formally request that Earth establish military training programs for all member species. We have much to learn from you. Sarah looked at the ruined hive, at the exhausted but victorious soldiers around her, at the alien officers who had finally understood. Not training programs, she said. Partnerships. We'll teach you what we know, but we'll learn from you too. Your technology has value. Our philosophy has value. Together, we're stronger than either alone. Agreed. Earth will have full voting rights in the Assembly, equal status with founding members, and authority to establish military doctrine for combined forces. Sarah extended her hand. After a moment's confusion, Zethker took it with one of his forearms. The gesture simple, human, ancient sealed the agreement. Over the following weeks, human forces helped liberate 3 more Scourge-infested worlds. Each victory reinforced the lessons. Simplicity worked. Reliability mattered. And sometimes the oldest solutions were the best solutions. The galaxy had laughed at Earth's ancient tanks, at weapons that belonged in museums, at military doctrine that predated starflight. They'd learned their lesson the hard way. In the Grand Hall of the Galactic Assembly, now filled with cheering representatives from 43 worlds. Sarah stood at the same platform where she'd been humiliated months before. This time, the holographic displays showed human and alien forces fighting side by side. This time, the laughter was genuine appreciation. The Assembly recognizes Earth as a full military partner, High Strategist Zethker announced formally. And we acknowledge that technological advancement is not the only measure of capability. Humanity has reminded us of an ancient truth. The best weapon is the one that works. Sarah smiled. Somewhere back on Earth, in a museum in Kentucky, a Sherman tank sat on its pedestal. Old, obsolete, and absolutely victorious, just like humanity itself.